Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today for Wednesday, May 7th. It's Alissa Coram here, and it was a busy day of headlines, especially in the afternoon. We had the conclusion of the two-day Fed meeting, as well as the conference with Jerome Powell, and some chip-related news that also broke late in the day. And joining me now to discuss everything we need to know about the state of affairs with the stock market is my colleague, Ed Carson. Good to see you, Ed.
Good to see you, Ali. I want to take a look at Halozyme, Uber, and JP Morgan.
Okay, we'll take a look at those stocks, but first, let's analyze the major indexes. Like I said, it was a Fed day, so we did get that intraday volatility, and it looks like we finished to the upside. The Nasdaq up 0.3%, the S&P 500 up 0.4%, the Dow up 0.7% on the day, and the Russell essentially finishing flat, or at least that way slightly higher, headed into the final stretch of the day. We can check out the intraday of the NASDAQ to get a little sense of that intraday volatility, a pretty big spike into the close, Ed. And like I said, some chip related news late. First, tell us what we need to know about the Fed and where things stand there.
Yeah, the Fed came out, didn't really surprise. They didn't take any action, and they want more information. I mean, they don't really know what's happening. Fed Chief Powell said we can't be preemptive. It's sort of like if you don't know what you're preempting, inflation or slower growth, it's hard to know which way to move. The Fed did say, we're seeing rising stagflation risks. The market seemed to take it in stride ultimately. It was sort of back and forth, back and forth. It really didn't move a whole lot on that. Earlier, there were some opening gains. If you look at the open, there was opening gains because there was like, oh, overnight there had been news that there's going to be U.S.-China trade talks. But then Treasury Secretary Bessent, who's going to be one of those people talking, said, these are basically early talks, more like a meet and greet rather than anything really substantive. So that faded. Then at the end of the day, as you're saying, President Trump, or at least the Trump administration, plans to rescind the last minute Biden administration push for this kind of three-tier global system where only a handful of countries would get the most elite AI chips. And so you saw NVIDIA and some other AI plays rally right at the end. We'll see how that goes. I mean, we could have second day reaction to the Fed for sure. And so this is a lot of earnings after the close. Have to see how meaningful this is. There's still lots of AI chip bans. Don't get me wrong. It just is this was like going to be another move. And so that was a positive. Ultimately, NASDAQ is trading between the 50-day and the 200-day line. You asked me yesterday, is this constructive or destructive? And the answer is yes. We don't know. It depends. There are handles being formed. You can see this. We've sort of been pausing for a few days. It's possible that if we take off, there'll be a lot of buying opportunities. If we go above 18,000, we get above the 200-day line. If we go south, a lot of those setups are going to look weak. A lot of the recent moves that look strong are going to fade and reverse. So, it sort of seems like a time to sort of hold what you have, assuming that stuff looks good, and just wait for a little bit more clarity, just like the Fed.
Yeah. And I think in terms of the technical action here on a day where we could have seen a lot of news go wrong, or the
Yeah.
reaction to the news, seeing a mild upside reversal is encouraging for the moment. But like you said, that could all change if we get a close below the 50-day, if we get a close below the 21-day line. Those would definitely be signals to back away. In addition to, like you said, how are leading stocks acting? Are they forming new setups, breaking out, forming handles, or are they starting to roll as well? So that will be interesting evidence as well as the days progress. Let's also check in on the S&P 500, Ed. Very similar setup here, where we are between that 50-day and 200-day. It seems like having that clearly defined range can potentially be helpful for the decision making process in terms of handling your portfolio.
I think that's a good point. It's sort of probably what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be looking at that and obviously looking at the leading stocks, as you say. Also, just remember, we've had a few days of calm. We've had that a few times in this past couple of months, but then you never know. I mean, we might get a huge up day, a huge down day. So don't be lulled to thinking that everything is nice and calm. This is like maybe a calm part in a roller coaster ride, and we'll know which way it's going. But yeah, real important ranges right here.
Okay. And a look at the Dow. We did see a bit of a rejection at the 50-day line recently and not able to get clearly above that just yet, but hanging in there and outperforming today in terms of where the major indexes closed. And small cap, similar situation right around that declining 50-day line. So still very much a battleground there for these two indexes. Any other thoughts, Ed, on what we're seeing play out on the index level?
Yeah, I agree with that. And Disney certainly helped the Dow. Getting above those levels would be really nice too. We
Mhm.
focus more on the S&P and Nasdaq, but we would like to see those other see the laggards at least get above the 50-day line. RSP, I believe, that was moving all around. That rose a little bit. One other thing that I forgot to mention, there's so much news, is that Google was hurting the S&P
Right.
and the Nasdaq. So
Oh,
because there was news that maybe it's losing search business like on Apple, and there could be some other issues there. So that really took a hit. That's weighing on things. Apple was also down a little bit on some of this stuff. And, again, these are mega caps. It's not a huge drop, but that's still 1% of a $3 trillion company. So Qs were okay. I think QQEW, again, that may have equaled out because NVIDIA, no, that
mm,
did outperform. Yeah, QQEW did outperform because it didn't have the Google drag, even though NVIDIA is not weighted as heavily in QQEW.
mhm.
So again, so there was a little bit of underlying strength outside of that Google issue.
Yeah, and you mentioned that chip news, so here's a look at SMH getting a boost, finishing up 2%, and you can really see where that kicked into high gear when that news broke, but it's still developing, right? We don't quite know all the confirmed details around that yet, do
We were
we?
reading on that, and keep in mind is that it could be that tomorrow Trump will come out with his 25% tariff on chips and electronics, which we know is supposedly coming. So that could turn everything around as well. So it's just, but a positive step for chips today.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, let's take a look at Halozyme. This was an earnings mover today that was very powerful, up 18% by sessions close. We covered this on IBD Live this morning when it was just first starting to break out, and it extended gains throughout the day, finishing with an RS line at new high ground and a blue dot there, really underscoring that outperformance versus the S&P 500, Ed. So it looks like investors cheered this report.
They certainly did. Really big move. I passed on this in part because I just didn't want to take any action ahead of the Fed.
Yeah,
And I didn't know it's up 10-12%, but we've seen that sometimes roll over the
right.
next day. But this was great. This was great action. So this is also a great example of why you want to have your alerts ready,
Mhm.
have things advanced. This is why you build a watch list. This wasn't high on my list, and so I didn't have an alert on this. So if I put an alert right ahead that short-term levels, maybe I don't buy right there, but I'm really, or maybe I make an incremental buy kind of thing. That's a way you can do it and build it up because now it's extended from the buy zone. It's pretty far extended from the 50-day line, but
Mhm.
this is why you want to have things ready so you see them immediately, see the early entries. Even if you don't take advantage of them, you're really prepared. You go, okay, well, when do I get in? But really nice move. Beat and raise report and really nice reaction.
Yeah, and it was showing that relative strength heading into the
Yep.
report, which was nice, and strong fundamentals here in the biotech space. It's profitable and solid double-digit revenue growth as well. So it's now at new highs. It seems like from here, Ed, if you missed it today, wait for some sort of follow-on pattern to form, right? Can it hold this big move? Go tight and give traders another chance to get in.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Uber also out with earnings, down 2.5% on the day, but very quickly erased early losses. It was taking quite a tumble in the early going, Ed, but rallied back. And so the closing range today, let's check it out, was at 70%. So well within the upper half of the trading range for the day. And it looks like another pretty explosive quarter of bottom line growth. You know, although it is going from a negative to a positive. But what do you think about the action in Uber?
Yeah, that was really impressive. Especially when you look at that weekly, it's gone up several weeks. And so, stocks that had a really strong move, you could have understood a sell off even if the report was pristine. And there were some
Mhm,
issues with it. It wasn't perfect. It was generally a good report. Uh, but so there's two buy points. There's the buy point, large consolidation, but I think a lot of people were using, say, 8210 or even a trend line entry. Yeah, that trend line or a trend line from the top. There's all sorts of places you could have gotten into there. I think 8210 was probably the best last place to go, and it tested that and came right back up. So from that perspective, it's still actionable. You could also, it could sort of form what you treat as a handle or a high handle, depending on your perspective, and use that as an entry or as a place to add on. They've made a lot of deals. It's not just the earnings. They've made a lot of deals that I think, make investors maybe a little more confident that they will have a role to play in the robo-taxi future. I
mm,
think there was concerns that Tesla's going to come in and it's going to crush everybody. So regardless if Tesla makes a big move on that or not, there's more confidence, rightly or wrongly, that Uber is going to have its place in that field.
mhm. Waymo, one such partnership. Anything else of note there, Ed?
Well, they have WeRide, which it already has some operations in the Middle East, and they're going to do 15 more cities in a few years. There's Pony AI, which is also China. There's Momenta. So there's a few out there that they've done in this the last several days.
Hmm.
So that just gives us like that it's going to have a foothold in that space.
Right. And what was really impressive to me, Ed, was the relative strength that this stock has seen in 2025, whereas a lot of stocks have struggled. And it's not like this was a pretty base formation here,
No.
but you look at that relative strength. That hidden sign of leadership, and as it turned, like you said, there were some chances. And for those who are waiting for another opportunity, like me, I'm going to be watching for a new setup now that earnings are out of the way. Okay, let's take a look at one of the big financial names, JP Morgan, tightening up around 250 and very close to a double bottom entry. Earnings are out of the way here.
Yeah, so I like how it's setting up here because this is going to be sort of an economic bellwether to a certain extent. I mean, if the economy is going to if it goes south, it's going to be hard for banks to do really well. That's just in general. So if we get clarity, this is just like with the emerging market, if you feel like we get trade talk progress, or if there's this or that, or the economy really is holding up well in April, May, you could imagine that these banks could take
Mm,
off nicely here. That 254 area is basically, if you go to the left, it's also basically where a prior top of a base was. So there is a lot of trading that's been happened there. It's just I wanted to bring it to people's minds because we're looking at some growth stocks, but you want to get these things on your radar ahead of time because you don't want to have this. I don't know if it's going to do a halo sign, but you don't want this to break out, and it's up 5%. You go, oh, I didn't realize. Maybe it's like, no, this is the time to be building things up. And there are a lot of things that are setting up right now.
yeah, there really are. It's a great time to be screening and looking for those watch list names. All right, Ed, anything of note earnings wise out after
A,
the close?
a lot of things. Let's take a look first at Mercado Libre.
Okay, let's go to
Um,
Melly.
Melly was in a buy zone. You could sort of see this as a handle. I mean, that is not a high handle; it's a handle. So it looks like it's going to break out. Now, this one can have wild moves on earnings, so we'll see what tomorrow brings. But
Mhm.
haven't looked at the numbers, but investors are liking it.
Yep,
Axon
up
Enter,
about a 9% for our Spotify listeners, Ed.
yeah, that's.
They can't see what we're seeing.
I'm
What
sorry,
else?
9% move, 9% Axon Enterprise. This one had a horrible looking break last
Last
time,
yeah.
but now is moving up. It sort of has maybe a little resistance area, an almost handle that's coming at that it could break through. It's having strong earnings or results after the close. On the
Mhm.
downside, we have Fortinet, which is I don't know what's happening there, but it's down 8%. So this one was sort of setting up, pausing, maybe forging a handle. Now it's going to go back below the 50-day line, according to earlier after hours action. ADMA, not huge move, and we'll see how this one goes. Down just a little bit, down 2%. It was sort of forming a shelf above a buy zone, so it's still acting okay. AppLovin, beaten down, but now it's up 10% or so. So it's just above the 50-day line. I know people will be asking this about me tomorrow
Yeah.
morning on IBD Live.
Get ready to talk about this one, Ed.
Yeah, and, I'm sorry, a couple more just as Carvana. That
Sure.
one had been setting up. It's coming down now. This one can have some wild, I mean, I don't know where this will end up. So maybe
Yeah.
this will end up fine. A lot of things going on in the used car space. And this one isn't really moving. I don't even know if the results are out right now, but I want to bring it up. Paycom. This one was sort of setting up nicely here. And
Mhm.
just, it sort of got a handle underway there. So if that does move out again, I don't know if results are even out, but that's another one to watch.
Okay, Ed, thank you so much for that earnings roundup. Okay, we've got 2 days of trade left, and you'll be hosting IBD Live. Sounds like there's going to be a lot to discuss. So we look forward to that, Ed. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And also make sure you tune in live at 5 p.m. Eastern today to the weekly Investing with IBD podcast hosted by Justin Nielsen. This week's guest is market wizard Mark Minervini, and he is going to be talking about how he's approaching his portfolio exposure as this market is in a critical juncture. They're going to be looking at historical examples and really diving into the tactical strategery, as it were, for how to handle these kinds of conditions. So make sure you check that out live at 5 p.m. Eastern on our YouTube channel. And then, of course, we will post the audio version to Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts. So you can check that out, the audio version, later tonight. So we'll see you tomorrow morning on IBD Live, everyone. And then we'll also see you right back here tomorrow after the close.